You're listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM. Presented by McDivitt Law Firm.
How are you? How's the family, man? You said they're almost back to school?
Yeah, we started e-learning this week. So it has been a little hit and miss. I mean, the school's doing a great job with that. The kids, we only missed one class, which is remarkable that you can even miss a class when you're at home, but you can do it. So I think the kids were out in the front yard, and we missed that they had a closing circle.
Right, still just strange days there.
Yeah,
that does lead into one of the hot topics before we get to Citizen March problem, which is going to be, I think, a great segment here in a few. Some of the other commonly asked themes involve school, and we got college kids and college parents that now want to get money back from schools in regards to e-learning. They're, hey, I'm not in the classroom. You're not doing this. You're not having to pay for air conditioning. You're not having to do this. We want some money back. And we're starting to see that now with some of the local schools, not necessarily money back, but they want something out of the deal because they don't feel they're getting the education that they were promised. Where's this going to go legally?
I don't know, and that's a really good question. I'm kind of scratching the surface of that myself, too. I mean, you look at, with schools where you're paying a tuition, whether that is at the, the grade school level or the collegiate level or the graduate school level. I mean, if you feel like you're not getting what you've bargained for, you may have some recourse for it. Look, I haven't dived into the details on it. I mean, I can look into it.
So no one's contacted you yet with a true legal case yet?
No, they haven't, because I think a lot of it's going to have to depend on what the schools keep in mind. There's this kind of feeling that generally these schools are trying their hardest to comply with government orders, so when you've got a new restriction coming down at the government level that restricts your ability to provide services the way you would normally do it. I mean, you could start to really kind of distill this down to, let's say, the restaurant level. You could start to complain, well, the restaurant shouldn't charge this amount because, I can't go and sit inside closer to the people I might normally want to sit next to.
It's
or because
Pandora's box, kind of.
Right, exactly. And so I think we all have to be a little bit patient with the process. Now, the problem is at the collegiate level because the cost is so high.
Yeah.
And you're paying to send your child, or your child is paying, or they're taking out loans, or they're working to pay for X, Y, and Z, part of their tuition or the room and board, and then you turn around and find out, well, maybe you're able to stay on campus, but you can't go into a classroom, and so you're doing it online. Then I think the university would push back and say, look, we're still providing access to what they would say world-class instruction or education, and while it's being delivered on a different platform, we're not able to deliver this platform to everybody. It's still select. It's only to the people who are able to get into this institution. I mean, it's going to cut both ways, and I think what you'll find is maybe some of these universities or these colleges are going to try to offer some way to maybe not reimburse the tuition reimbursement, but to try to help give some other benefits that you might not ordinarily get. And look, I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, right. Maybe the future of their education is going to be cheaper too. That's my wife's theory. She's like, man, pretty soon everyone's going to be able to afford to go to a high-end college because it's going to be through the internet. It's going to be for a couple grand because that's all someone's going to pay to get told what to do through the phone.
I know, and you know what? That's it's kind of scary when you think about it, because for a lot of people, they choose to go to an on-campus environment because there are some real advantages to doing that. And others choose not to do it and have made those choices for the last X amount of years, where they've offered either correspondence classes or more recently online classes. And there are some advantages to doing it that way as well. And so what you want to have is an education system that can provide support in an educational program that matches what is in that particular student's best interests. And so I think that's what education is really going to strive to do, is try to find different ways of delivering education in a way that matches the way that particular student best learns, so that we continue to graduate from every level, from kindergarten all the way through graduate levels, people who are as educated as they can be and who are able to then go out and maximize their own talents and follow their dreams. I mean, I know it seems so kind of utopian to have that perspective, but I mean, that's the goal of the educational system.
And like I said, everything that we do is new, and what's going to be the normal is still not quite set in stone. We don't know what 1 year will bring. Will it be the normal? We'll be back to just the way it used to be. I guess only time will tell. All right, let's see here. Rock lines again are open if you want some time with Dave. The Law Frog segment rolls through this hour, 633 Kilo. We're going to definitely conquer Mark's question here in a few minutes. It's a chance to free a man, maybe. And I'm very curious. I never heard of factual innocence before, but real quick, the short version of the story, and we'll get into it here in just mere moments. A man falsely accused, wrongly convicted, and now looking to get this whole thing overturned due to something called factual innocence. Is there such thing, yes or no, as factual innocence?
Oh, I thought this was the teaser.
No, you.
Am I answering now?
This is the teaser. You say, is there such thing as factual innocence? Because I never heard about this till Mark's email.
Stay tuned. Keep listening for the answer.
All right. See, it's
Is
perfect.
that what I'm supposed to do? Because I'll do my dramatic movie trailer voice.
That's it. Do that one more time and we'll be golden.
In a world where innocence is not proven in court, where facts are not themselves factual, in fact, they are factually not factual.
You're listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM. Presented by McDivitt Law Firm.
And I think that's the case for our next guest here this morning. As his name, Citizen Mark, I shot you his question yesterday. I'd never heard of factual innocence until the email from Mark. Is it a thing?
Yeah.
It is.
There's a thing, but I think we need to kind of dive into this a little bit. By the way,
for those who don't know, the email reads from Mark, I was falsely accused of domestic violence in 2015. I went to court, wrongfully convicted, appealed the conviction, and of course the appeal was denied. Recently, I've seen a person can file for factual innocence. Is this a possibility for me to clear his name? I mean, domestic violence it's a horrible thing. And there's so many horrible angles, and to be falsely accused, if it's legitimate, it's a tough place to be.
Yeah, it's tough. And so a couple of things. Technically, in Colorado, we do have something called factual innocence. However, that in using that vernacular, factual innocence tends to be implicated when you're talking about a stolen identity.
Okay.
So if somebody steals your identity and commits a crime, and they're going around saying I'm Ross Ford, and I brought this Ross Ford out there stealing cars, and then they finally catch Ross Ford, and then you're able to, but actually they don't catch him. They come to the station, they arrest you, and you can say, well, yeah, I'm Ross Ford, but that person stole my identity, and that's why he had my driver's license in the car.
That's a scary aspect of life right there.
Well, for somebody to be impersonating Ross Ford?
Well, just to someone come knock and say, Mr. Ford, you're under arrest for robbing 5 banks and stealing 14 cars. Like, wait, I was,
I was on the radio.
Yeah.
How did I do that?
That's a horrible thing that's even possible, that they have to put a law out there to then make it more achievable to get your life back.
But they do, and they do. And if you can prove that you really weren't that person, I mean, you are you, but you are not that version of you, you can you can get that kind of stuff.
Okay, but then how can that apply to Mark's situation, or can it?
Mark's situation is a little different. So there are a couple of things that might be implicated. And look, we are going off of a 2-line email here.
Yeah,
so
what would you like to know? I mean, Mark, if you want, you can send us, like I said, I didn't have your email or a phone number, but if you'd like, I can pass your name and number along to the Law Frog, and you guys can discuss more off there. But what would you like to know more about to make this?
So a couple of things. I mean, I'm intrigued by the appellate track so far. Where are they on their appeal track? Because you can have different levels of appeal. When the conviction took place in 2015, did he? What was the penalty? I mean, was this a misdemeanor? Was this a felony? Because you can have domestic violence can be implicated across a range of crimes, and so it can be you commit a crime, but you do it within the context of a domestic relationship, then they tack on a domestic violence component to it as well. So I think there are a couple of things. I guess the thing I'm most curious about is what would be the facts to support his innocence.
Right.
Because I guess his perspective is like, I'm legally guilty, but I'm factually innocent. Like, I didn't do it, even though the law says I did. And there are prisons full of people who say that. And there are I think, I don't know if you can say in every prison in the country, but there are prisoners out there who are imprisoned who didn't do it. There's statistics show the number of erroneous incarcerations. I mean, it does exist.
Yeah, I mean, you just do the simple numbers alone. There are people who are falsely convicted of murder and all other kinds of crime. Granted, it's a small percentage, but there is that niche.
And as we get more sophisticated with DNA evidence, we're able to, exonerate people, and then they begin the process. It's a slow process. It can be a painful process, but it's better than being incarcerated, but of rebuilding their lives and their reputation. So, what is this and DV, we've got to be careful. I mean, too often we say a he said, she said, but, we need to be more sensitive. It could be a, he said, or she said, she said. We don't, whatever pronoun we apply here, it's the idea that one partner is saying something and then the other partner is saying something else. Were there any witnesses? What are the other facts to underpin this? Can you show that really there was evidence that he, as Mark, didn't even have access to, and through reasonable channels and due diligence still wouldn't have been able to obtain this evidence that has now come to light to show that he was in fact innocent? Does he have that evidence, or is this just something where he just maintains? Look, and maybe maybe it was his wife or his girlfriend. Let's just assume that for purposes of this conversation. And she's saying that he did something. He's saying, no, I didn't. And he's arrested and he is prosecuted based on that evidence. And I have seen it when I used to be a public defender. I would see this time and time again where somebody's arrested and there is an altercation. And a lot of the stuff that I saw tended to be two people drinking. They got into an argument. The argument escalated. One of the partners called the police. The police came. They said, yes, so-and-so was X, Y, and Z toward me. So they arrest that person, and then it comes time to push the prosecution forward, and then the first partner, everybody kind of calms down a little bit, and they say, oh, I don't want to push forward. And so you have some prosecutions that don't take place that should have, because these people are in an abusive relationship and they need help, they need support, they need resources. You have others where you've got what we can call the false accusations, where you've got somebody who's very vindictive and they then try to manipulate the law in a way to get back at the partner for one reason or the other. And let's assume that that's where Mark falls for purposes of his perspective. He falls into that category. Then you just have to look at, like I said, what new evidence is out there, and then how did the appellate process work? I mean, what was the grounds of the appeal? What were the grounds of the appeal?
I knew there was going to be a lot of more questions that we need to really give this guy a full answer. So
absolutely. And so, what I will say to him, if he writes you back, Ross, I'm happy to speak with him or get him in touch with a lawyer who specializes in post-conviction relief, trying to see if they can get something overturned. And then the trick is getting it expunged, which is really difficult in a DV context. The law in Colorado allows certain, and when I say expungement, that's where they can basically seal the record, and you can go around and say legally, yeah, it didn't happen, I didn't do it, I wasn't convicted, I'm not guilty of X, Y, and Z when you're applying for a job, for example.
But you feel
have a felony on
the
your record.
Factual innocence thing is probably just not going to fly, right?
You're listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM. Presented by McDivitt Law Firm.
Well, I make a hazmat suit look good.
Right? That's he says. I rock a hazmat suit when I go out. One of them. It looks like a tuxedo, though. It's like a hazmat tux. It's very, very entertaining. Let's help a guy out there, maybe. As we got John on line one, Citizen John. How many felonies have you racked up in the darker days, Citizen John?
4 or 5.
4 or 5. Last one was 10 years ago.
Yep.
And you kind of...
Actually, 2006.
Okay.
10 years ago is when I finished everything else.
You became, kind of a free man, free of your obligations from your previous problems. But it's amazing how these things linger. It's very hard to get a regular life. You can't do anything, can you, John?
Not really.
You can't get a gun? You can't vote? What else?
Pretty much those are the two main things I actually want to do.
Yeah.
But I don't even think I can go hunting.
Yeah, so it's tricky. So let's talk about, John, you can hear me, right?
Yep.
So we've got two different kind of issues here. One is being able to own a gun or use a gun. And then the other is your right to vote. In Colorado, not too long ago, passed a pretty comprehensive passed pretty comprehensive legislation that has really expanded the right of people convicted of a crime to vote again when they've completed their sentence, basically, whether if they're on parole when the parole finishes. Essentially, as I understand it, the day that their sentence concludes, that they've done everything, that their right to vote is restored. And so there's regardless of where the crime took place. So you mentioned off the air you used to live in Arizona. Those crimes might have been committed in Arizona, but you live in Colorado now. Your sentence is complete. You're a Colorado resident. As I understand the law, now I don't specialize in election law, but it was just as I understand this, that you would be entitled to vote, to register to vote again.
Will that supersede anything that was done in Arizona? Any felonies there?
What'd you say about that?
Well, that was because my newest case was here. Would that supersede the rules of Arizona?
Well, you don't live in Arizona.
More felonies in Arizona than Colorado.
He's got more felonies in Arizona than Colorado. That sounds like a book. That should be your book title.
Well, unfortunately, I came to this state, and 2 months after I got in this state, I got into a fight. Someone tried to stab me. I grabbed his hand, threw it in his leg, and he was stabbed. I went to prison.
Wow.
And the reason why that happened is because I did not know the laws of this state.
Right, and the fact that you were carrying felonies did not probably suit you too well either, huh?
Yeah, that too.
See, it's just stupid stuff like that, and especially when it comes to being a dumb kid. If you've lived any kind of good life, chances are you've been on the very edge of some illegal stuff a time or two, and one wrong turn, you could have landed in some kind of a felonious situation. So John wants to know, what does he start to do to rebuild his life?
Well, so a couple of things. On the gun thing, first of all, I don't think anybody should mess with John. I think that's...
yeah. Don't try to stab Citizen John, everyone. You're going to get stabbed.
It's going to turn out poorly for you. Getting the ability to use a gun again is a little tricky. You basically, as I understand it, have to get pardoned by the governor of Colorado, and that can happen. Pardons are rare. There is a formal application process for it, and you can go online and look for the rules on how to do that and how to begin that process. But you talk about reestablishing your life. I mean, the ability to vote again. There's this theory that people who vote tend to be less likely to commit crimes too. So they want to encourage people to invest in their civic responsibility to vote and to speak up and use their voice. So I think you can pursue that track as I understand it, and unless I've just misunderstand the law, that's how I interpret it.
So you're thinking the voting, the chance of getting back to being a voting citizen, pretty good for John. There's but the chance of firearm ownership is
very low.
Very low. Now, have you known anyone to ever successfully petition the governor to get a firearm after a felony? Mr. McDivitt, law god.
The law god.
The god. Anytime, have you ever...
generally starting with a pardon, and so I don't know tons of folks who've been pardoned by the governor because I don't know tons of folks, but it can happen. And John, to go back to one of your earlier questions, you mentioned if the more of your felonies in Arizona versus Colorado. I think what they're going to look at too is to make sure that you've completed your sentence for everything. I mean, you like you said, you've been pretty clean now for 10 years. Law-abiding for the last decade, which, by the way, I think you need to have that kind of track record in your pardon process, too, your pardon application, your clemency application. So, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and beef up your resume, John.
You're asking the right questions, and I think you just take some more steps, and you can really start to rebuild part of this.
And then start working on some of your charitable stuff, man. Donate some of your time, John, to some varies on what your passion is, if it's people or if it's animals or if it's helping. Maybe Scared Straight program is great for someone that's been through what you've been through. But start getting that on your resume a little bit. Show you become a better citizen, and maybe, John, you can vote. I bet you'll be voting again, John. Firearms.
Some of your scare minors.
Yes. We're encouraging you to scare minors, John. Tell them about that time that guy tried to stab you and straighten those little bastards out, okay?
Kids, if you do this to me, man, your legs are going to be sore with stab wounds.
John, good luck, okay, buddy?
All right, bud.
All right, man. Guys. Thanks. That is tough. We've had that kind of question time and time again over the years, and it's from a kid at 18 years old who did something real stupid, and he's suddenly 30-something years old and would love to go hunting again, and I just can't do it, huh? It's a tough world there, Mr. McDivitt, isn't it?
It is, and the psychologists of the world will tell you too. I mean, a person's trajectory in the world is governed less by their raw intelligence than it is by the decisions that they make.
Thank you for listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM, presented by McDivitt Law Firm.